within the umbrella of the African Union. These issues have all been discussed within that mechanism because, you know, within the African Union, there is a number of bodies that deal with political, economic, social, infrastructure, all kinds of issues. There have been a number of decisions that have been taken, but unfortunately, and that is the issue, these decisions have not been implemented so far. Therefore, we see today, as you say, famine. We see a failed state, as in Somalia, ongoing since 1990 now. No one is really interested in trying to find a resolution to this conflict in Somalia. So I think there has to be more will of the African leaders in order to tackle these issues because they reflect in a very negative way on the development of the continent. We should really concentrate more on development issues rather than conflicts all over the continent today.
Sir, you've mentioned and said before that Africa is rich in natural resources and it's a virgin continent. It's untouched until this moment, and nobody even tried to use this continent well, except some investors who come and take their interest and the raw materials, for example, and leave. We have also, it's rich also to have oil, it has diamond trade, which is one of the famous trades in Africa, gold and lots of natural resources. Why the international powers are not interested in Africa and they are focusing on the Middle East and leaving this rich continent?
No, I wouldn't say that the international powers are not interested in Africa. On the contrary, I believe if you look at China, for example, it's all over the African continent.
But it's China not only.
No,
China and
no,
Israel and some Arab countries.
And the United States and the European Union. I mean, they give, for example, the European Union, through the African Union, they give a lot in order to have a say in the end. But going back again, and the United States today is forming AFRICOM, this rapid deployment force again within the African continent. So I wouldn't say that there is no interest in Africa, on the contrary, because the West today can see how China is moving all over the African continent. And they are really doing a very good job, if I may say, in helping African countries, but they're not helping for nothing. I mean, there's a price being paid for this. So, no, I wouldn't agree with this.
But why they are not interfering to stop the deteriorating situation in the African
because
countries?
they are taking advantage of the natural resources of Africa. I mean, we've seen before what diamonds have done to some African countries. There were wars that started because of diamonds. Gold, take for example Democratic Republic of Congo, with its spacious land and all these resources, and unfortunately, look at Congo today. And look, if Congo used all of this or took advantage of all of these resources that it has, what it could have been as a country. So this, I believe, is unfortunately done in a manner, in such a way, by the West to keep these countries divided like that and to take advantage of the natural resources of Africa. And it is being taken, unfortunately, from Africa.
Okay, during the 2014 foreign intervention was invited, namely during the massacres against Muslims in Central Africa and violence in Mali. Do you believe that Africa now needs urgently an international intervention, whether the international powers wants to be involved or not? Do you believe that Africa is in need of international intervention?
I don't think that it is something that will be healthy for Africa for an international intervention because I think that through the African Union we can achieve a lot if the will is there of the African leaders and there is no manipulation by other outside forces outside the continent. I think that we can solve many problems within the African continent. We've had one example of this is what happened in the Comoros before, and the African Union sent a rapid deployment force, and they took care of the situation, and the conflict was over. So if there is a will, there is always a way.
But how do you weigh the international intervention and how it was succeeding so far in solving the African problems?
I'm not sure.
Do you believe that any intervention in the African continent,
outside
international intervention, did they succeed in solving the problems when they did?
Well, let's take Somalia, for example. Mm-hmm. The United Nations intervened. The United States intervened. And what do we have in the end? Mm-hmm. Nothing. Yeah. Because there is no real will to solve this problem, this conflict of Somalia. Mm-hmm. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay, corruption has featured high when speaking of investment in Africa. What are the steps taken to overcome it, and how do you weigh the success of such steps?
Well, there's been a number of good governance programs going on within many African countries, and I believe this will help tremendously. It will contribute in such a manner that will curtail corruption, because let's face it, I mean, corruption is not in Africa only. Mm-hmm. It's all over the world. But unfortunately, it's more in Africa than it is in other places. But there are good governance programs going on today in many countries on the continent, and I believe they will succeed in the end to that goal.
Mm-hmm. You've been an ambassador, former ambassador to Ethiopia for almost 4 years. Ethiopia now is trying to lead the African countries. It has certain ambitions in being a developed country. Do you believe that this is true? Ethiopia is on the right track despite all the problems facing this country?
Ethiopia is a developing country, and it wants more development, and it has every right to develop. We cannot, stand in the way of that, except if that development is on the expense of others. Then we cannot allow this to happen. But Ethiopia as a country has every right to develop, and if they can to lead also, we have no problem with that. Mm-hmm. I mean, we have seen recently how positive the relationship between Egypt and Ethiopia now, mm-hmm. Because I believe that we are communicating now directly together. This, unfortunately, in the past was not happening, and this was a main reason of the rift that existed between the two countries. There was no real communication between our two countries, but now there is, I believe, what President Sisi did by opening up and towards Ethiopia and communicating directly with the Prime Minister of Ethiopia had a very positive role in this warming up of the relationship between the two countries.
But sir, in the past, Egypt had in the old eras, Egypt had a big say in Africa. Now the influence of Egypt in Africa is almost over. Why? What happened?
I wouldn't say it's over, but what happened is Egypt was the cause of this. Egypt pulled away from its natural role in Africa that all other African countries always were looking forward to. They always looked up to Egypt as the big brother and